allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. So, I'm asking for a motion to excuse Sandy Shell.
If I may, Chair, that'll
Oh.
wait until after we do the
Oh,
roll
yes.
call. Or during the roll, after the roll call.
Okay.
Just so excited.
So excited.
Member Pache.
Here.
Member Earl.
Present.
Member Bicknell. She's on mute, but she's here.
Present.
There you are.
Hi, Pat.
Member Raffinelli is running a little late, but he will be here shortly. Member Schill is absent. Chair Taylor.
Present. And I'd like to ask for a motion to excuse Member Shell.
I'll second that motion.
Have to state it first.
I'll second the motion to excuse Member Shell.
You'll have to start by stating a motion. I move, and then
Oh,
someone will also have to
Sorry,
second.
I move to second.
No, you'll move to the first question. I move to excuse.
Oh, sorry.
Member
I move
Schill.
to excuse Member Shell. Thank you.
You're good, sorry.
And I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No.
I got confused that
Okay.
you were chair of the board. Sorry.
And motion stands. And we are very fortunate this evening to bring on a new board member for their oath of office, welcoming Miss Eliana Galvan. Please come forward.
I state your name.
I, Eliana Galvan,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and laws
and the Constitution and laws
of the state of Washington and all valid ordinances,
of the state of Washington and all valid ordinances,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and I will faithfully and impartially
perform the duties of the Parks Board
perform the duties of the Parks Board
for the city of Ridgefield, Washington,
for the city of Ridgefield, Washington,
according to the law and to the best of my ability.
according to the law and to the best of my ability.
Welcome. Everybody come.
Oh, yeah, we're doing a full picture.
Okay.
Picture.
Right there.
You're like standing super far apart.
I was leaving space for you guys, so I could be on the outside.
Okay. Perfect. Great. Thanks, guys.
Right. Congratulations.
Yay.
Yeah, thanks, sis.
Sorry, I forgot you were board chair. Sorry. So I was like-
Great. Are there any late changes to the agenda?
There are no late changes to the agenda, Chair.
All right. Now it's time for public comment. Is there anyone requesting to speak to the board regarding all items not subject to specific public hearing may come forward at this time. Please state your name and limit comments to 3 minutes. Written comments may be submitted to the clerk prior to the meeting.
I got you.
Hello? Okay. Hello, thank you for your time. My name is Kelly McMorris. Today I would like to advocate for fenced-in playgrounds designed specifically for toddlers and their caregivers. I'm a mom of 3 children, including a 2-year-old. I'm also a member of the Ridgefield Mamas Facebook group. And in that group, I see many local moms of young children struggling to find ways to meet other parents. A common way for parents to meet other parents is at playgrounds. The problem with this is that toddlers are very fast. Their boundless energy and total lack of self-preservation instincts mean that taking them to a playground requires constant vigilance. This makes it difficult to socialize because everyone is running around after their toddlers. No one can just sit and have a conversation or stare at our phones like normal people. So for the sake of Ridgefield's toddlers and their parents, I would like to make some suggestions that the committee can take into account when designing future parks. Number one is small playgrounds which are low to the ground to minimize falls. Features that require minimal supervision from caregivers, such as tunnels to crawl through or musical instruments to pound on, are also helpful. Two is a rubber ground covering, such as the one at DeMello Park. These are great for babies who are still crawling or toddlers who just fall down a lot. And most importantly, a gated fence, such as the one at Pioneer Park right outside. That's actually a really great gated playground, but it's only available to the general public on weekends. I vividly remember the time my 3-year-old decided to sprint away from a playground into the distance at top speed, across a field and toward a street. I had my newborn strapped to me, and so I wasn't able to run fast enough to catch up to her. All I could do was just watch as she disappeared into the distance. Thankfully, she did eventually stop, and I caught up with her. But ever since then, I've understood the value of parks that have a gate and a fence. It's one of the best features to give parents a chance to just sit down and breathe. Number 5 would be a shaded bench for said tired parents. And lastly, if there's any money left over in the budget, a coffee vending machine would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? All right, public comment is closed at this time. Can I have a motion to approve our minutes from the, was it March or April?
March 12th.
March 12th, 2025 meeting.
I motion to approve the minutes from the March 12th, 2025 meeting.
Okay,
I second that motion.
right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? All right, motion stands. Our first business item is the recommendation of the engineering standards for the Volume 3 Parks, Trails, and Recreation Design and Construction. Our presenter is Park Manager Corey Crownhart.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chair and Parks Board, and I would specifically like to welcome Member Galvin to our Parks Board. It is a joy to have you and your perspective here. All right. Well, we have been talking about a lot of different topics over the last year, and this is one of our larger projects for the year, updating and creating a Volume 3 of our Parks and Trail Design and Engineering Standards. Next slide. So essentially the engineering standards, as you all already know, and we've talked about all of this before, so I'm going to kind of touch on some of the bigger pieces of the engineering standards and allow us to have more time simply to discuss them. But our engineering standards are what we impose upon contractors and developers and construction teams who are building infrastructure throughout the city of Ridgefield. We currently have 2 volumes. Volume 1 is for our infrastructure in the city. This is water lines, stormwater facilities, roads, sidewalks. All of those components are housed within those standards. Our second volume is our building code. These are all the standards regarding what type of fire suppression needs to exist within homes, what types of structures need to be put in place, what are the visuals on the outside of structures, and those are both enforced by inspectors within our city. We are creating a Volume 3. that would be specifically for parks and trail assets throughout the city of Ridgefield. This would be all of our parks, everything that's built within them. They'd be trash cans, benches, tables, playgrounds, as well as our trails and a little bit of our outdoor or open spaces. So we've talked about this a couple of months ago. We took this to council just about a month ago to discuss this further and get their feedback on these individual standards. And we're bringing them back to you for an opportunity to make adjustments and to ask for a potential recommendation of these standards to council for their review and potential adoption. Slide. So as I talked before, the reason why we have these standards is to ensure that things are built to a safe standard and to an accessible standard. We want to make sure that we have proper recreational assets that support the overall the desire of the community to be outdoors, and we want to make sure that the things that we build, we can properly maintain long term. It may cost a little bit more to build a product, but we want to make sure that after it's built, it is easy for us to take care of it long term, driving down that operations and maintenance cost. Slide. Here are some examples of some compromised assets that we have in Parks and Recreation across the city. Each of these assets you see on here have been built in the past 5 years and were built to standard. This includes trails that do not have proper vegetation barriers, meaning that they have weeds and vegetation taking over the trail, making them impassable by users. We have poor water drainage and very steep grades that make it hard for users to access these spaces. We have some park amenities such as park benches and trash cans that the amenity itself may be an ADA compliant bench. However, the trail to get to it is not, or it has not been properly maintained, or it's not been taken care of by the HOA. And then finally, we've got a lack of connectivity in many of our spaces. So down here in the lower right-hand corner, we've got a beautiful bridge that crosses one of our seasonal creeks in the city of Ridgefield, and there is nothing on the other side of that bridge. There is hope that there will be one day, but to have an asset like this put into a space that does not have recreational value really are lost opportunities for this community to ensure we have what we need. So how we compare to others, we talked about this last time. This would be some of the highest standards in the county when it comes to parks and recreation, and it would be fairly comprehensive. That said, it would allow us to have trails that are accessible, allow us to have trails that are of high recreational value, and that have high resiliency to ensure we can take care of them long term. Slide. We talked about this last time, but I do want to stress that there's a difference between making sure that we have outdoor access and having fully accessible trails. A phrase you won't hear me use often is an accessible trail. It is a misnomer. For example, the trail at Beacon Rock, if any of you have been out there, it's a very steep grade. It's about a 15% grade across the length of that trail, and it has lots of twists and turns, and I don't think anybody would consider that to be an ADA compliant trail. That said, it does fit within the Forest Service Trail Accessibility Guidelines because we want to balance access to our beautiful outdoor spaces and preserving the beauty that we're actually going out there to seek. So if it changes the natural character of the space, that's when there are opportunities to deviate. We don't have to create new standards of what these exceptions look like. That's where the Forest Service has done that job for us. So if we can reference their standards and use the focused work that they've already done, we can ensure that we've got proper trails built in these spaces. On top of that, it ensures things like if somebody wants to build a mountain biking trail within the city of Ridgefield, we don't have to create a new standard for a mountain biking trail. There's already engineering standards specifically for mountain biking, which is different than a hiker or an equestrian trail for that matter. So this allows us to have a larger breadth of trails. Next slide. There are 7 chapters of the engineering standards. The first one is the submittal requirements. This states all of the things that a developer would need to submit to the city for us to verify that they're following the standards. And our principle here is to not require more than is necessary. That said, it is a lot. We are asking for things like what's the cross slope of a trail, what's the grade of a trail, what's the physical location of that trail, what's the base rock, what's the cross section of the materials used. All of this is to ensure that things are built to a proper standard. Slide. This is probably the most exciting part of our presentation tonight, and this is a proposed new classification system for our trails within the city of Ridgefield. This would break our trail system up into two different classifications. One is our multimodal trails that have a transportation purpose, and our recreational trails, which would have a recreation purpose. The benefit here is that by having multimodal trails that are transportation focused, they qualify for different types of grants. We can be able to go out there and find transportation funding to help support the development of a cycling, pedestrian, accessible path across the city that is helping transportation. While at the same time, our recreational trails will allow us to still get to those unique places in Ridgefield without destroying or without changing the natural character of the outdoor spaces that we're accessing. So this is the way that we've structured it. Arterial trails and collector trails, which is very similar to the names you'll see used for our arterial roads and collector roads. And our recreational trails, we have a hiking trail, which is our designated or designed use trail that is specifically for hiking. An example of this hiking trail would be the trail that goes from the visitor center at Ape Caves, from the visitor center to the cave itself. 6 foot wide, paved, gentle grade, that is a fully developed trail with a designed use of hiking and pedestrian. A semi-primitive trail is all of the other types of trails that exist within the Forest Service. So if a developer or a team would like to build something other than the hiking trail, they'll just have to get approval first. To check that off with the city, to say, yes, we would like to put in a mountain biking path, or we would like to specifically put in an equestrian horse path. And the benefit here is those standards already exist. So I don't have to do more work. All right. Any questions on trails before we go forward?
I'm sorry, did you just say, like, for developers, do they have to follow, they can pick any of these trail kind of things within, say, new housing developments going? Are we trying to have them do mostly hiking trail, or what if they do all semi-primitive, or is it gotta have like so many percentage? How do they break that up for the
They'll
developers?
still be required, as of right now, our current standards state that our type 1 trails, which is what our current standards are, which are the transportation style trails, those are the ones that they're compelled to build if they build on a designated site according to our PROS plan. So our Parks and Recreation plan specifies different corridors throughout the city that will need to have trails built, and if a developer builds near those and there's an opportunity, they're required to build that trail, and it would be a multimodal trail. It would not be, well, I'm just going to throw in a little tiny dinky dirt trail and call it good. They're going to have to put in a multimodal trail to fulfill the requirement of the code.
And I had a question. Virtually on a map, these trails would be specified for the public, right? So they'd be able to know, looking somewhere on our website for the city, that what each trail.
Yes, post-construction, we'd identify that for the public, so you'd know which is which,
Okay.
which makes it a lot easier for users to utilize them.
Yes.
But more importantly, they also would put those on any plan sets before anything is built, so that our team of staff, including our engineers, can review it to ensure
Right.
that what they are building is to code.
I didn't get that. I have a question for you, Corey.
I know you didn't get that. Okay.
On the hiking trails being the asphalt, I think that the majority of the trails that people, if they conjure up what is a trail in Ridgefield, they're thinking semi-primitive. So I'm extremely pleased to see this designation coming together and the opportunity for grant funding that could formalize some of these other trails. I'm wondering about the pace of development signage and identification of these, because I think the public is more familiar with those dirt trails through Abrams or through a number of other places in town.
There would be work that we would be doing next year, Member Bicknell, would be to assess our current trails that we have and classify them based on this new standard. Most of our trails are likely to fall within that semi-primitive standard, and there'll be an opportunity for us to really start looking at how do we want to increase connectivity within our city. So next year during our closed plan process, we can inventory what we have and then take a look at what might we want to improve or adjust in the future for these spaces. And just for reference, all existing trails and parks would be grandfathered into our system. They would not have to be updated immediately, but if there were any renovations or major improvements to these spaces, they would have to meet the new standard.
Yeah, I understand. Given the fact that I rolled my ankle on a trail that was pretty rutted by winter storms and all, it was a beautiful trail, but talking to my physical therapist this evening, he asked for connectivity. So he's a Ridgefield physical therapist who said, since you're going to that meeting tonight, if I could ask for one thing, I'd love to have trails that connect. And so I think that the continued support through this naming system and anything that gets us the grant funds, if we can develop something when we go out for public contact in our, all of our summer activities that we do, if we could figure out a way to help people understand how this is going to evolve and how the grandfathering in process works and give them some visuals. There's just a huge amount of support in the community for continuing to make this happen, and I want it to rest on the side of people feeling good about where we're going rather than that we're, we've been talking about this for years. It's really great to see this progress, so thanks, Corey.
Thank you, Member Bicknell. All right, next slide. Let's talk about playground safety. As we've talked about as a Parks Board, we have 4 people on staff that are certified as certified playground safety inspectors, including myself, which means we can go out and certify playgrounds to make sure that they're safe. The standards put for you today would require that all playgrounds that are publicly available within the community would have to pass a certified playground safety inspection prior to opening to the public. As of right now, we do not require that for any of the playgrounds being built. Next slide. Characteristic requirements when it comes to our amenities and fixtures. It rains about 6 months of the year out here, and we have trash cans that do not have lids. This standard would require us to have amenities and fixtures that are weather resistant, that we would have lids on our trash cans, and that they are features and fixtures that we can actually maintain long term. Again, this is about making sure that they're maintainable and resilient. Next slide. Signage and servicing markings. So the graphics you see on here are an example. They may not be the exact signs that we're looking at. We've talked about this multiple times as a Parks Board, and we're actually going to be bringing back to you a full brand and sign and brand manual that's been in development by our communications team. And essentially what this does is specify that we would have a standard for how our signs look across the community. So if you have a trailhead in your neighborhood, if you're visiting a friend in another neighborhood, you'll see a sign that looks very similar to the one in your neighborhood, therefore signaling that, yep, that is a trail and I can access it. There are a couple of our trails in our community that are available to the public, but they may have signs with language that can sometimes deter visitors from going into them. Maybe they've got the right words, but the wrong colors. For example, a big yellow sign that looks more like a vehicle management sign that says, pedestrians only. It doesn't necessarily draw people into it. Or sometimes there are signs that the largest word on there is the word no. So this would move towards positive language that would welcome people to these spaces, as well as would require that we have accessibility for different languages for users in the community.
Corey, does that fall into a guideline that any developers would then use for signage, or is this only when the city takes over the asset?
This would be for our assets as well as developer assets. So we would provide them the graphics. They would have to approve those graphics through us, and then they could install those signs.
Okay, we have one of those pedestrians, we have one of those in our neighborhood, thank you.
Absolutely. Next slide. Water sustainability, we want to make sure that we have, we're taking care of the water that we have, so it's requiring that all of our sprinkler systems installed in HOA or community-owned parks meet particular standards. So that's our big piece for landscaping. And then finally, talking about worker safety. We have a stellar team that takes care of our parks and trails. We want to make sure they've got spaces to pull their vehicles over and they are not potentially struck by a vehicle or in any danger when they're doing their work. So this would require that there are designated spaces for them to pull their vehicles over and that there is proper designation for emergency access. So we've already talked with the fire department about these standards to ensure that their emergency equipment for outdoor rescues can access all of these spaces that we set up within the city. Next slide. So with that, these are all things we've talked about before, we've dug into. So you've had an opportunity to review the 19 pages of standards and the information that's in there. So I will turn it back over to you, Chair, for discussion and potential consideration.
Yeah, it's just such a nice presentation you did, and it's so well thought out. Does the board have any discussion?
I have a question. So regarding the accessibility, would you want to be like adding accessibility to parks that are already here and building new parks that are accessible, or would you just focus on building new accessible parks?
So to make sure I'm getting your question right, do we have to go in and update our current parks that we have?
Yeah.
As of right now, all of the playgrounds that are operated by the city do meet the ADA requirements for the federal government. That said, ADA compliance and inclusive design principles are a little bit different. So if you were to go down to Davis Park, or if you go down to, let's say, Abrams Park, the big play structure that's there, the very bottom where the kids walk up the stairs to go up into the play structure, you'll notice that there are 2 steps, there's a turn, and then it goes up, right? There's that little platform that's there. And if you go to almost any playground, if you go to any of ours, you'll notice that platform there. That is called a transfer deck. Those exist so that individuals who are in wheelchairs can wheel up to that space, can transfer themselves onto it, and then crawl up the stairs. That is considered ADA accessible by federal standards. There are many opinions on whether or not that is acceptable or enough for a community, and I think the opportunity that we have with these standards is to include an encouragement to use inclusive design principles. And to boil that down, it simply means that every user of every ability can access every amenity and interact with it in some way. A really good example of a inclusive design playground would be the small playground that's at Esther Short Park, where the farmers market is in Vancouver. That was built by Harper's Playground, a very strong advocate for inclusive design principles, as well as Marshall Park. Marshall Park has an inclusive design playground as well that I strongly encourage all of you to go take a look at. That said, do we have to go in and update all of our old ones to be a higher standard than the ADA? No. It does mean that if we were to do an update in the future, we need to make sure that we are continuing to hit an ADA accessibility standard. As a community and as policymakers, Parks Board and Council, you all can recommend to Council to go beyond that. It doesn't necessarily have to be within the standards, because those are standards that then all developers would have to comply with. A way to think about this is, if you were to have inclusive design principles, there would be no monkey bars in any playground, because those would not be inclusive design. However, it's a consideration of, do we still want things like that within our community? That's a question for you all to determine. Does that answer your question properly, Member Galvin?
Yes, thank you.
Anytime.
Are there examples of like mixed playgrounds? So like, Abrams Park has the future of, redevelopment, keeping the bigger playground, but the small one I know is to be moved, making one more inclusive, but then the other one not. Is that like taboo, or is that something to consider?
It's not necessarily, it's not unheard of within parks and recreation to have varying degrees. Right? You can go full bore inclusive design principles like you have at Marshall Park. There is a cost that comes with that. There's a design cost, there's an engineering cost, there's a maintenance cost that comes with that, and then you can kind of move the needle in different areas. So there's opportunities to include more inclusive design features within a playground, but maybe not the entire park itself. A good example of this is the park that is in Hillsborough, Hidden West Creek Park. They have a beautiful play structure that is also a great piece of art. It's a monkey that is laying in the grass. It's 20 feet tall, and kids can crawl inside. There's a slide in his leg, and it's a truly beautiful piece of art, and does not follow inclusive design principles. However, right with that, and not as a separate space, but incorporated into it so it feels natural, are inclusive design amenities within that space, play structures that allow individuals with disabilities to be included in those spaces.
How does the individual that asked, the mother that asked the questions tonight, or the fencing, is that part of the conceptual idea, or that's a whole separate ballgame?
As being within the standards, there's not a requirement that we'd have fencing around all of the play structures. That said, when we design and build structures, those are things that, again, policymakers can help make some decisions and directions on, to say, yes, we want to make sure that those are included in these spaces. And so we'll be sure to make sure we bring those considerations to you in the future.
I can definitely relate to the concerns of the mother with young ones running around. Don't have that privilege anymore, but the idea of citing playgrounds that are for young ones maybe farther away, I think the idea of making things inclusive, a gate around it or something that is an obstruction is probably of concern, just as we have at the dog park. But again, whether it's what I'm going through with a sprained ankle or anything that I've dealt with in aging or with my folks or different abilities of my kids, I think that the typical thing we're thinking about with inclusivity is wheelchairs, and that person, she was such a spectacular presenter who helped us to really expand our thinking around the idea of what it means to create something that's inclusive, and how we might need to just accept the fact that some of our places are going to be inclusive for one audience and some of our places will be inclusive for another, and that we have to be willing to talk about that and share it with people so they know where to go when they're looking for a different type of experience. That's just one of the things I've observed over our years of trying to meet all the needs of everybody, is that sometimes our spaces are going to get us about 80% of the way there, and we'll have to go to the next one.
I agree with you, Beth. Is there any other discussion? All right, if there's no further discussion, is there a motion to recommend the Engineering Standards Volume 3 Parks, Trails, and Recreation Design and Construction Standards as presented?
I motion to accept the engineering standards as presented.
All in favor? Oh, excuse me.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. All right, and our second item on business is the consideration and recommendation of Parks, Trails, and Recreation Capital Facilities Plan. And our presenter is Mr. Crownhart, Park Manager.
Ooh, all over again. This is great.
What a surprise.
All right. So this is every community in the state, every municipality has to put together a comprehensive plan as part of the Growth Management Act with the state of Washington. And part of that comprehensive plan process is the development of a Parks, Trails, and Recreation Capital Facilities Plan. So this is part of the overall Envision Ridgefield 2024 comprehensive planning process, and one of the boxes we need to check for the year of 2025. Next slide. So our objective today is to, we've already discussed these standards once, or this capital facilities plan once. So our objective tonight is to ask for your opportunity to consider a recommendation to council as presented. So with that, let's dig into our biggest pieces here. Overall, having a capital facilities plan helps drive the direction of where we're going as a city over the next 6 years. We want to ensure that we are taking into account the infrastructure for parks and trails that our residents will need to be using, while at the same time considering the new residents that plan on coming into our community. We do have an urban growth boundary that we anticipate growing into over time, and this capital facilities plan ensures that there's a consideration of what parks and trail assets need to be acquired, constructed, designed, and built to ensure that those new residents have spaces for outdoor play. Next slide. So with that, you have an attachment that has the overall capital facilities plan. And the primary difference from the last time that we had talked about the capital facilities plan are some implementation principles that was provided by council when I met with them 2 weeks ago. The first implementation principle they focused in on was to remain flexible and look for opportunities. As we grow over the next 6 years, there'll be opportunities for us to put parks in different locations throughout the city, but the capital facilities plan simply states locations that we should generally be looking for. The two primary places for acquisition are on the east side of the freeway, where they're hoping to have at least 2 new parks, one of them being a community park, and the other being the Carty Road sub-area. Essentially, the space in that community is going to be going through development over the next 4, 5, 10 years. So we want to make sure that as there is development happening there, the city is keeping its eye on opportunities to acquire land for the development of parks, at least one neighborhood and one community park. They would like to use a phased approach when it comes to or a phased conveyor belt style approach when it comes to our parks. As you know, we have lots of projects that happen with our parks, and typically the community learns about a new park when they see shovels hit the dirt. Right? When you see construction, that's typically when they see it. The reality is there's typically been work done over the past few years to get us to that point. Those primary projects being master planning as phase 1, phase 2 being our design and permitting, and then phase 3 being that construction. So the direction from council was to have a conveyor belt style, wherein if you have a master plan, it goes to design the following year, and the year after that, it then goes to construction. That way we keep things moving forward at a pretty regular pace. And with that, if we have multiple projects, they're all moving forward one step each year, with the objective being to have ribbon cuttings every single year to be delivering on quality projects for the community. The third thing they asked for is to make sure that we're delivering projects annually, which I just mentioned, and to properly celebrate them. So we are planning and working with our communications team to ensure we have proper ribbon cuttings for all of our new assets. And with any luck, we'll have 3 ribbon cuttings later this year. They also provided feedback to avoid piecemealing or incomplete park builds. So try and build a full park as opposed to only putting in 1 or 2 amenities at a time. Finally, they did also ask that we promote equitable access across the city. So they've asked that as part of our 2026 Parks, Recreation, and Open Spaces plan that we will be addressing next year, they would like us to include an assessment of access for all residents within the community. Essentially, they want to make sure that there is not everybody has equal access to the spaces around them. So how close are you to a park or trail? Slide. Here's a handout of what this capital facilities plan could look like in terms of funding. Mind you that this is not a budget document that we're considering today, but a planning document. So this may be what it looks like, but it's not you're not approving a $14 million capital facilities plan for the foreseeable future. Slide. With that, Chair, I will hand it back over to you for discussion and potential consideration.
All right, board discussion. I feel like this is the really exciting meat and potatoes part. I get really excited to look at this.
Did you look at relative comparisons for how it's done in other, like you did in the previous plan?
Yes, we were able to look at some comparisons to other communities. It's fairly on par when it comes to the dollar amounts. That all said, next year will really be our opportunity to dive much deeper into Parks and Recreation and Open Spaces planning, because we'll be working on that PROS plan. This year is an opportunity for us to, most of this capital facilities plan is based on our previous PROS plan, and that said, a lot of it will help inform how the next one is built. So when we dig into the PROS plan next year, there'll be an opportunity for us to refine this capital facilities plan even further, make adjustments, possibly take things off or add things to it. But that's part of the planning process.
Is there given economic events that may or may not be given economic events that may or may not be in control of the city of Ridgefield, which are somewhat unprecedented, is there a buffer, or is that taken into consideration? Since it's hard to make decisions, and some of the stuff you'll be getting might
absolutely, and that'll be
absolutely,
and that'll be a consideration of council and policymakers. So we as a staff are happy to go wherever you may point us. If that's more or less, we want to make sure that we're fulfilling those needs.
So I know, excuse me, Boys Park and Paradise Point Park are the two that you mentioned for kind of opening this year. Does the city council, I know that you said they'd prefer not having the phased approach, so are they looking to accelerate those phases, or is it just kind of like those have already been established that they'll need to be phased, and then for future parks?
Those will have to be phased in future parks. So unfortunately, that's where we are with those projects, and we want to make sure that we're spending the dollars that we have to get those amenities in there, and we're vigorously working to find more dollars to help complete those projects for sure.
I have a couple questions, Corey. On the Horns Corner, is there any possibility that there's going to be further delay on that? That is one that I hear about an awful lot around town.
It's uncertain. It's hard for me to predict whether or not we'll have the dollars to complete that project. It's really going to come down to, are we able to find grants to help support the development of that? Next year, the Resource Conservation Office does opens up their grant process so that we can seek funding. So I know Horns Corner may be an opportunity for us to seek a $500,000 grant with a $500,000 match, which would get us a good way there. But we are looking for more options. That said, if council wants to make Horns Corner a high priority, it's something that can be done.
Okay. Yeah, that's been one that's been promised for an awful long time, and there's a lot of folks that have really enjoyed moving into the Clover Hill area and are wondering when there's going to be a park in that whole area up on the ridge.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be something I think that Horns Corner, I'm glad to see it on the calendar for 2026, 2027. If there's something that there could be, or there needs to be community support in order to really get that project moving, I think that would be one that would engender a lot of goodwill in the community, because it has been languishing for a few years. The other question I have is around the idea of a conveyor belt approach to trails and connectivity, my ongoing banner that I carry. Wondering if that could also be something that's on the capital facilities plan, is a really clear articulation of our connectivity of our trails.
Yes, and actually, part of the capital facilities plan that's before you, I believe in, let me double check it here.
Mostly around the connectivity piece of it is really like how to articulate that to the community about what the larger plan is.
I think part of the, and Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm having a hard time pulling it up. It's the, there is a, I wish I got it. One second. The second item on the capital facilities plan project list is something we're calling the Trail System Assessment and Connectivity Plan. This would be proposed in 2027 to provide us a roadmap for how we can get to a place of having more connected trails within our community. Essentially, this is an opportunity for us to find where are those segments that need to be built out within our system to create that connectivity, and it gives us an opportunity to create a plan for achieving that. That's one of the projects that's been included as part of the capital facilities plan.
Thank you. So with the idea of those trails that would connect, and hopefully we'll get that funding in 2027 to make that rise up a little bit, and being able to formalize that, the whole system that we have here. But the idea of, sorry, hang on a second. I'll be right back. I'm just having a little bit of a problem with my ankle here. Hang on just a second.
One thing while we're waiting for Beth, I think that I was focused in on is with the budget and everything and the actual dates. If I'm hearing you correctly, that it's not set in stone. So if there were partnerships to come up, and partnerships are huge, it looks like, with the county and school districts and nonprofits, that it could rearrange a little bit for certain things based on what is presented, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, the funding mechanisms, the dollar amounts that you see on here are projections. They're not full-on estimations. That said, when looking at these, this helps us build those partnerships. This is a tool that we can use to go out into the community and say, we're looking at doing something like this. Can you be a partner to help make this possible? And many of these, there's that opportunity there. But by having a capital facilities plan, it gives us that tool so that when we go out to folks, we have something to show them.
Is Beth back? No, she's still muted. Okay. And my other thing that with the connectivity piece for me is just that safety corridor down. I just would really like to see that be a priority as a Parks Board member with the Pioneer. I'm going to say that over and over and over and over.
Yeah, I love that part of Pioneer for sure. And then last time we talked about the Ridgefield Community Center, is there any update on that construction side of things? I know I'm going to keep harboring you on that one, but is there where with that?
We are at about, I believe, 60% design. So I know that we're at that point in terms of when or potential breaking ground or potential opening. I don't necessarily know those just yet. That said, I know that we're eager. We are excited. we want to get to this point. We have a strong relationship with our community partners, and we are still in conversations with the YMCA. They have a new CEO that's starting next week, and we're looking forward to working with them as well as their board to continue those conversations. But we are optimistic. And to remind you, I do serve on the YMCA's Ridgefield Advisory Committee as a representative of the city to kind of help build those relationships, and they've got good things going, as well as programs that are happening right now, despite the fact that we don't have a facility yet, such as our programs down in Abrams Park. So I'm optimistic that we're going to have a community center. Actually, I'm sure we're going to have a community center. I'm optimistic that YMCA will be a part of it.
Thank
And
you,
Member
Corey.
Bicknell, are you back?
Thanks for making note. I am back. I'm back. I'm sorry. Thanks for giving your time to that. That's it means a lot to all of us who serve on the board and putting in all these years. To have somebody who commits your free time and energy to that, serving on that board. And I appreciate it. So the continuation of my question around trails and identifying these spaces really kind of ties into what you're saying on the approach of how things would be planned out. A strong thing that we have been hearing over the last couple years with all of the development that's come to our community is the importance of our old growth trees and the legacy that sort of skyline provides, aside from what the habitat considerations may be. As important as they are, I think a lot of people identify trees with the skyline of their community. And I have heard a number of people asking for a way that if developers are bringing a plan to the city, that we could identify those areas that are going to be developed and protect the old growth trees that are within them from the outset. Understanding that trees like the beautiful oak trees that were preserved along South Royal Road are wonderful, but having driven by what it took for 7 years to protect them, I totally understand why it doesn't happen that often. But I believe that we have an opportunity in the areas that we have so clearly identified developers need to designate within these subdivisions for the 25% set aside, that part of that means that the trees, that natural environment, aside from what is required for environmental protection, but actually in the green space people are going to be using, that those trees get preserved. So that was the last big thing that I was really hoping to bring up, because I've heard it from so many people around town. So thanks for listening.
Absolutely. And there are components of those exact values that are already in code as part of our development code, which is RMC 18. So there are sections in there on tree plans, landscaping plans, and requirements for those spaces. So I can get you a copy of those if you need, Member Bicknell. But we do have some of those currently in code. The engineering standards wouldn't reflect that. They build upon those, but they do not specifically address trees within the engineering standards. And then just as an aside, oak trees are protected by the state of Washington, so they can't just cut them down. They have to protect them when building out these spaces. So if you go to some of our communities, you'll notice, or some of our developments, you'll notice that there are oak trees that are sometimes in peculiar spaces or peculiar, they're kind of built around these spaces to have them, to ensure that they are protected.
Yeah, I've seen that, but I just, a number of folks have expressed their concern about how many old growth trees they've seen taken down, so.
I have a follow-up question regarding funding and partnerships with that. So would there be a way for Ridgefield High School to do like a fundraiser within ITUNA, which is the club I'm going to be the vice president of next year. It's International Teens Upholding Nature Association. I'm just wondering if there was a way that we could help with funding through a fundraiser. And I'm also going to be the ASB treasurer, so I could manage all of that.
There are opportunities for different nonprofits and organizations to contribute to our parks in different degrees. It would depend on what they want to put in. We're working with a partner right now to make some improvements to the Onslow Nature Play Park, to do some nice improvements to honor Mayor Onslow and the family as they've contributed to the community. But absolutely, we could connect with the ASB and organizations to add some amenities within our parks. It would be a heavy lift to do the whole park. I mean, unless you guys want to raise a couple $1 million, I think you can do it. But if there are other, there are varying levels of opportunity for folks to get involved, whether it be a park bench, trees, picnic shelters. If someone wants to sponsor a Portland loo or a bathroom, by all means, we want you there. But there are definitely ways to get folks connected with the amenities that they want to see within their parks, and they can help sponsor them.
Well, and every little bit counts, right? Is there any other discussion? All right, if there's no further discussion, is there a motion to recommend the park board work plan, or excuse me, I moved ahead, the Park Trails and Recreation Capital Facilities Plan to council?
Sorry. I move to recommend the Parks, Trails, and Recreation Capital Facilities Plan as presented.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. All right, we're moving on to our final item of business, and that is the approval of the Parks Board Work Plan Q1 report. And our presenter is our park manager, Mr. Crownhart.
Wonderful. All right, so what I have before you today is the Q1 report for your work plan for 2025 that we are required to submit to council at the end of each quarter. So January, February, and March were busy times for us. An opportunity for us to, we did provide recommendation for the code amendments. Those were adopted by council. We did some work to recruit a youth member who was appointed last meeting and had their first meeting today. And all of our other projects, many of them are on track and moving forward as expected. We've had small changes in our schedule, such as meeting today as opposed to having May off, but I'm thankful that you all were able to adjust your schedules accordingly. So with that, this is the report that I've put forward for you. You've had an opportunity to review it, and if you will consider potential approval, we can submit it to council for their records.
Yes, is there any discussion? Did everybody have an opportunity? Great. All right. Beth, anybody? Great.
All good here.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, is there a motion to approve the Park Board Work Plan Quarter Report for City Council?
A motion to move for the Parks Board Work Plan as it is presented to council.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we've reached our final opportunity for public comment. Anyone requesting to speak to the board regarding all items not subject to specific public hearing may come forward at this time. Please state your name and limit comments to 3 minutes. Written comments may be submitted to the clerk prior to the meeting. Right. With that, nobody, we'll do staff reports.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chair and Council. Chair and Parks Board, my apologies. I didn't want to demote you. All right. I want to give you an update on some council actions that have taken place since our last meeting. On March 13th, they approved they had the first reading for the code amendments. On March 27th, they adopted them. So we have some new park rules. Congratulations. On April 3rd, There was scheduled to be a study session where I was going to discuss the capital facilities plan and engineering standards with council. That was unfortunately canceled. This is what led to our change of meeting from last month to this month because of some timeline shifts. With that, I presented to council the capital facilities plan and the engineering standards, and on April 24th, the council appointed a new member to Parks Board, our first youth member, Eliana Galvin. We're so excited to have you here. And on that note, I just want to point out that, we are just absolutely thrilled as a city to be working with you, Member Galvin. I think that having your perspective is going to be very valued, and we want to work to ensure that this is a valuable experience for not only all of our Parks Board members and the community, but most importantly you. So congratulations, and truly we're honored to have you on this Parks Board. All right. Other things that I want to share with you. We are currently in a park naming process. So Paradise Point Park is, we worked on extensively last year. We are in the process of soliciting feedback from the community on tell us what this park needs to be called. We did have someone submit that it should be Corey Crownhart Park. I don't know if that is a very high honor. I don't know if I want that responsibility. That said, we've gotten some wonderful submissions. We have about 45 submissions right now. I encourage the public, please send more ideas. We want to hear more. At our meeting in June, we will have our first public hearing as a Parks Board to invite the public to come share with us their thoughts in person on what they want the names to be. So this will be a special spot. It's a little bit different in our agenda. I'll work with you, Chair Taylor, to make sure that it's all set up, but we're looking forward to having folks come in and get their 3 minutes to tell us what you think the park should be named and why it should be named the one you're suggesting. From there, you'll be able to make a recommendation to council, and the council will then take up a final consideration of naming that park. Then we'll have our new name for a park that's been chosen by the community. So, other things that are happening, the field house at the Rourke is expected to be finished by the end of the month. And speaking of the Rourke, the Raptors have their season opener on May 29th. I hope everyone's able to go Raptors. We are just so thankful to have them at the Rourke and part of our facility and our community. So I very much so appreciate all the work that they've done with us. What's coming next? Next week, I will be out of town at the Washington Recreation and Parks Association annual conference, and I will be bringing with me Mr. Kelly Melroy, our facilities supervisor, and he's actually going to be doing a presentation. I'm so excited to get Kelly to do a presentation. So I'll be sure to bring back a full report on everything that we learn, but it'll be great to learn what other park agencies are doing across the state and what we might be able to replicate and bring here, and maybe what pitfalls we can avoid. You've discussed before the desire to have a city tour with council and the planning commission. I'm happy to share that we have a tentative date. So I will send you an email, but as of right now, we're looking at potentially July 1st. So save the date. Some of our larger projects for later this year, we're going to be discussing the Parks Revenue Program. We have funds allocated to start seeking ways to find cost recovery and how do we earn some operating dollars from the park system that we have. The national median for park agencies when it comes to cost recovery is about 20%. We are sitting at about 1%. So there is an opportunity for us to find ways to utilize our spaces to earn a little extra dollars to help take care of our spaces. And there's creative ways to do it. And hopefully our consultants that we hire on will help us navigate those opportunities. So there'll be lots of discussion with you later this year. Finally, my Get Outside message. I know that I'm getting ready for all sorts of camping trips and backpacking trips. And one of the first things I like to do is pull out my first aid kit and do a full inventory. I encourage everyone, please pull out your first aid kits, inventory them, make sure you know how to use everything in there, replace the Tylenol that's probably expired at this point with something that's not expired, but please assess your first aid kits, become familiar with them, know how to use them. I hope you never have to use them, but when you do, please do know how to use them and keep people safe out on our trails as well as those out in the broader community. that's all that I have, Chair.
How about from the board?
No, just with this weather, it's been nice to get out and use our parks. I'm excited to hear more about the why, and I heard a recent talk by Jennifer Lawrence about some of the things coming with that, so I'm looking forward to how the Parks Board can collaborate with them in any way. And good advice about the first aid kit. I think I just got one in Amazon, so go check it.
That is good advice. I am planning to get up. I missed it last night, or this morning. I couldn't get up. I couldn't get myself out of bed, but I am going to get up really early in the morning and go try to see that meteor shower. I really want to see it. So I think that's special.
For funding, has there been any thought of like what the traditional First Nations or Indigenous name was of the area where you're trying to put the park? Or because if there's more outreach to the Cowlitz in particular, they have a set amount of money they have to give away because they're a casino and under law they have to do that. And so that sits there. One part of their foundation sits there. And I know there's politics between their entity and the Chinook and other entities, but if there was a crossover there, like where my mother lives in Canada, they actually changed the name of the whole town back to the original name in First Nations name. So
We've had some submissions for Paradise Point Park that are native and reference our communities that were here prior to settlers. So there are definitely those that are in there. When it comes to the funding aspect of it, that's something I can definitely take to city leadership and share that perspective.
Went to the YMCA play day thing. Signed my son up for his first YMCA camp, the Little Explorers at Abrams. So excited for that little bit. I don't recommend having a baby right before summer because all the summer things that I want to do are kind of, yeah. But my parents are taking them out for a little cabin. They glamp, my parents, so they'll get some outdoor stuff. I just wanted to also, I saw real quickly the splash pad. It says something about Q2, Q3. I don't know what Q3 goes into, but I feel like that's past summer. So are we not looking for summer anymore?
We are trying our very best to get something by the end of the summer.
Okay.
There'll be more information coming out in the next about 2 weeks.
Okay.
So, but as I continue to stress with everyone, that the splash pad will open when it is safe.
Yeah.
That's our biggest objective, is to make sure that we put an asset out there that is going to be safe for our community, that is going to support our community, and that we're proud to stand behind. And it's been a long process, it's been a lot of work to get here, and we recognize that.
I just wanted to share that Ridgefield High School is trying to build a sit space with our Ituna Club. So we're going to plant native plants outside in this grassy area that we have, and we got it approved by the school. And the president right now wants to do it next year, which means it gets to be left in my hands. So funding and everything. But we're going to build like an outdoor classroom. So I'm really excited for that.
Wonderful.
All right, that's really cool. And with that, I also want to say welcome. We're so excited to have you. And that's it. So we'll adjourn at 7:38.